My name is Jessica Miller. I'm 28, a soldier out of Fort Carson, and I finally wrangled a week of leave. I thought Albuquerque would be just family time with my sister Patricia. Coffee in the mornings, catching up on things we'd missed. Instead, the desert heat slapped me awake the moment the cab door shut and left me standing in front of a stucco house that already felt too quiet. I walked up the gravel path, duffel strap biting into my shoulder. The package on the porch had yesterday's date stamped in big black ink. I pressed the doorbell, then knocked harder when nothing happened. Curtains stayed drawn. The handle didn't budge. Standing there in boots and a base t-shirt, I looked like a recruit at the wrong barracks, waiting for an officer who wasn't coming. The sound of shoes crunching gravel broke the stillness. I turned. A young woman in a maid's uniform slipped out from the neighbor's side gate. Breath short, eyes wide, like she'd been running. She stopped in front of me, scanned the street, then whispered, "Are you Jessica, Patricia's sister?" "Yeah," I said, tightening my grip on the duffel. She grabbed my forearm, sudden and strong. Training told me to break contact, but the panic in her face held me still. "Don't trust her husband," she said. Her voice cracked. "Don't let him pull you in." "What's your name?" "Mariah." She glanced at Patricia's door, then shoved a folded slip into my palm. "Hide it." Before I could speak again, a deep engine growled from the corner. A black SUV turned onto the street, sunlight glaring off its hood. Mariah stiffened, eyes darting. "Smile," she whispered, and vanished back through the gate as if she'd never been there. The SUV rolled to a stop. The driver climbed out first, a man in his 40s, gym-built frame, expensive sunglasses that hid his eyes, but not his swagger. His grin spread wide, practiced, the kind that made my skin itch. "You must be Jessica," he said, tone smooth. "Travis Cooper. Heard a lot about you." The passenger door opened. Patricia stepped out in a sundress, hair pinned back, smile stretched too bright. She hugged me hard, and I felt bones sharper than I remembered. "You made it," she said quickly. "Flight was easy," I answered, pulling back to look at her face. "You change your number again?" "Long story." She laughed without warmth. "Come on in." I adjusted my stance as Travis hauled my duffel inside, moving like a man showing off. While their backs were turned, I curled my fingers around the folded slip still in my hand. Without opening it, I slid it under my boot insole, pressing it flat beneath my heel. The desert sun burned on my shoulders as I stepped across the threshold. Whatever Mariah had given me was already cutting the ground under this house. And from the weight under my boot, I knew this visit wasn't going to be the kind of family week I had imagined. Travis Cooper set my duffel in the hallway, like it weighed nothing, then turned back with a grin too wide to be casual. He slid into the chair across from me, elbows planted on the table, watch angled just right to catch the light. "So," he said, "how long you been in now? Army's tough, sure, but what's the plan after? Pension? Something steady?" The words rolled out smooth, too smooth. Not curiosity, calculation. Patricia moved between us like she was hosting a cooking segment. A pitcher of iced tea sweated on the counter, grapes in a bowl, everything staged. The smell of lemon cleaner clung heavy in the air, masking something sour. I kept my tone flat. "Plan's simple. Keep going until someone tells me different." He laughed, half a beat late, like reminding himself laughter was required. His gaze stayed sharp. "Stability, Jessica. That's what matters. Garrison Build Partners. That's my outfit. Small company now, but the city's booming. Desert Ridge Development is where the future's at." He let the name linger, watching for a reaction. I raised my glass, let the ice clink, and gave him nothing. Patricia jumped in with talk about HOA meetings in a new coffee shop down the street, her words bouncing like marbles without weight. She avoided his eyes and mine. "You still painting?" I asked her. "Back when we were kids, you'd fill sketchbooks in a week. You ever set up a studio here?" The question landed like a strike. Her hand slipped. The glass slid, shattered against the tile in a spray of water and shards. "I'm sorry," she blurted, crouching fast. Her fingers trembled as she gathered pieces, a small cut blooming red on her knuckle. I half rose, ready to help. Travis didn't move. He only watched. His grin stayed, but his eyes hardened, cold as steel. That look wasn't for her. It was for me, for noticing. Patricia dumped the shards, rinsed her hands too quickly, and forced a smile. "It's fine, really, just clumsy." But the stiffness in her shoulders told another story. Travis leaned back, arms spreading across the chair as if he owned the room. "She's good with numbers," he said smoothly. "Keeps me on track with the paperwork." He gave her arm a light tap, not affection, reminder. Patricia lowered her gaze, lips pressed tight. I studied the man across from me. He'd tossed Desert Ridge on the table like bait. He'd let me see his polish, his confidence, his claim to the city's future. But what I saw was my sister flinching, bleeding into a paper towel while he kept talking about contracts. He tipped his glass, ice chiming. "This city's changing fast. People like us, we make it happen." I stayed silent. Silence cuts sharper than words when someone's already measuring your worth. Patricia sat back down, hands folded, smile fixed like a mask. The sound of the broken glass still echoed through the house. When I finally looked up, Travis was already watching me. The grin stayed in place, but the warmth had drained out. His eyes tracked me like a problem to be solved. And in that moment, I knew I had just made his list. By the second evening, the house was starting to show its seams. A bookshelf in the office sat just crooked enough to reveal a safe tucked behind, the kind hotels use for passports and cash. Envelopes piled in the kitchen drawer, unopened, the bold lettering of debt collectors shouting through the thin paper. Travis showed the house like a salesman, but he couldn't stage away the cracks. Dinner out was his idea. "Best steakhouse in Albuquerque," he boasted, sliding into the booth like he owned it. The waiter nodded, and Travis ordered a bottle of wine loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Patricia asked for water, her voice too quiet. He turned to me, knife tapping the edge of his plate. "Jessica, you ever think about the future? Army's not forever. You need something stable. Desert Ridge. It's the next big opportunity. You get in now, you'll thank me later." His words weren't casual. They were a pitch, rehearsed, as if he'd been waiting for this very moment. I lifted my beer, buying time. "Sounds like a lot of work," he grinned. "Work's nothing if the payoff's right." Patricia shifted beside him, her hand trembling as she tried to steady her fork. The steak knife slipped, clattering against the plate. Travis's smile didn't falter, but under the table, his arm shot out. His hand closed around her wrist, hard enough to make her flinch. Her eyes flicked up, wide, but she forced a laugh that sounded like a cough. I saw the way his fingers dug into her skin. I saw the way she tried to hide it. My jaw clenched. Training says, keep calm, don't escalate. But every muscle in me wanted to slam his hand into the table until he let go. Instead, I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. I told myself, not here, not yet. The waiter returned with plates. Travis released her, smoothed the napkin across his lap, and carried on with another story about investors and permits. Patricia's hand stayed curled in her lap, out of sight. I pretended to chew, but every bite turned to ash. The weight of the folded note under my boot pressed harder than ever. Don't trust him. Ask about Desert Ridge. After dessert, Travis leaned back, hands behind his head, like a man perfectly at ease. See? Nights like this. Music, wine, family. That's what matters. Stability. His eyes cut to me, testing. I smiled faintly. Stability hasn't killed me yet. He chuckled, but the sound didn't reach his eyes. Outside, the night air was cooler, the street lamps humming. Travis lit a cigarette, exhaled slow, and stared down the road like he was waiting for someone. Patricia stood close to me, but not too close. Her shoulders hunched, her eyes down. On the ride back, she didn't say a word. He filled the silence with more talk about growth, money, opportunity. The words poured over her like chains. Back inside, I set my bag down, my mind already working. I'd seen enough. His grip, her silence, the mask slipping just for a second. He thought control was invisible, but I'd lived long enough to know that when someone squeezes that tight, something always cracks. And when it does, you need proof in hand before you strike. That night, as the house settled into silence, I sat at the desk in the guest room and wrote one clear line in my notebook. Find evidence before confrontation, because next time, I might not be able to stay quiet. The morning sun burned hotter than expected, but I didn't lace up for exercise. I walked the block twice, looping back toward the neighbor's gate. Mariah slipped out like a shadow, eyes darting before she pulled me inside. The house smelled of coffee and laundry detergent, lived in comfort compared to Patricia's showroom perfection. Mariah's hands twisted in her apron. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "I need answers," I said. "Why did you warn me?" Her jaw tightened. "Because he's not who he says. Travis isn't a builder. He launders money. Dangerous men come late at night. They talk about accounts, about moving people who ask too many questions. Patricia, she signs everything. Transfers, contracts, whatever he puts in front of her. Her name is everywhere." She slid a USB drive across the table, small and plain, but heavy with meaning. I copied what I could. Emails, transfers, documents. It's enough to burn him, if you're careful. I pocketed it, keeping my face still, even as adrenaline surged. "Why help me?" Her eyes glistened. "Because once, I loved someone like your sister. He trusted the wrong people. They destroyed him. I won't watch it happen again." Upstairs, a floorboard creaked, and she stiffened instantly. "Go. If he finds you here, we both lose everything." I slipped out the back, looping toward Patricia's house. She was at the table, envelopes spread, like a storm across the wood. She jolted when I stepped in. "Back already?" "Ran short," I said. I sat across from her, lowering my voice. "Patty, I talked to Mariah. She says Travis forces you to sign papers, that your name's all over accounts." Her face drained, then hardened. "She talks too much. Travis takes care of me. You don't understand, don't I?" I leaned forward. "Hospital bills, debt collectors, he uses them to cage you. That's not care, that's control." Her hands shook as she gathered the papers into a neat pile. "Jessica, please, don't start. He's my husband." It cut sharper than I expected. Patricia, the sister who once covered for me when I broke Dad's truck mirror, was now protecting the man breaking her. I didn't push further. Instead, I nodded, calm. "If you say so." Her shoulders sagged with relief, mistaking my silence for surrender. But inside, my decision locked in place. I couldn't rely on her denials or his charm. Not anymore. That night, in the guest room, I slipped the USB deep into my bag, beneath folded uniforms. I booted my laptop, but didn't plug it in yet. Some evidence you don't touch until you control the network. I wrote 3 words in my notebook, underlined twice. No more guessing. Then I added a fourth line. Time to prove it. Down the hall, I heard Patricia's laughter, too bright, too rehearsed, drifting from the living room as Travis told another story. The sound made my chest ache, because the mask wasn't just hers anymore. It was the whole house, and I was done pretending. The house always went quiet after midnight, but silence isn't safety. Silence is when secrets start to breathe. I slipped into Travis's office, careful with every step. The desk lamp glowed faint amber, spotlighting his laptop left open like bait. No real password, just his initials and birth year. For a man who bragged about being untouchable, he was sloppy. The screen filled with contracts, wire transfers, and spreadsheets, coded just enough to look professional to outsiders. But I've seen lies dressed up before. Desert Ridge stamped everywhere. And then I hit the offshore accounts, Cayman Islands, shell companies, numbers stacked in columns that would buy a city block, and every signature line carried the same name, Patricia Miller. My sister wasn't a wife here. She was a scapegoat, loaded with liability for his empire. I copied everything to a clean USB, sweat pooling under my collar as the progress bar crawled. The office seemed louder with every tick of the clock. A floorboard groaned outside. My stomach clenched. I yanked the drive free, snapped the laptop shut, and dropped into the chair just as the door cracked. Patricia's face appeared, pale in the lamplight. "Jessica, you scared me half to death." "Then we're even," I muttered, heart hammering hard enough to shake my ribs. She left, but I didn't sleep. At dawn, I buried the USB deep inside my duffel. Wrapped in an old uniform shirt that smelled faintly of dust and motor oil. Metal against fabric, like armor. But armor isn't enough without backup. I stepped onto the porch, phone pressed to my ear, air sharp with desert chill. "Callahan?" Michael Donnelly's voice came fast, familiar. Former squad leader, now a cop in Colorado Springs. "Yeah, I'm in Albuquerque. Patty's husband, Travis Cooper. Ever heard of Desert Ridge?" The pause was heavy. Then a curse. "Yeah, I've heard. They've been on radar for years. Money laundering, cartel whispers, politicians looking the other way. Nothing sticks because they always use clean names to front it." "My sister's name is everywhere," I said flatly. "That tracks. They set spouses up as fall guys. Jess, you're playing with fire. If he even smells suspicion." The front door groaned open behind me. I killed the call mid-sentence, sliding the phone into my pocket. Travis walked out in sweat-darkened gym clothes, towel slung around his neck. He smelled of cologne layered over something sour. He stepped in close, closer than anyone who wasn't family should, and dropped his hand on my shoulder. The weight pressed down like a shackle. "In this house," he said, his voice calm and cutting, "we don't snoop." Every instinct screamed to break his grip. Instead, I forced my lips into something that looked like a smile. "Relax, just clearing my head." His eyes didn't blink. They drilled straight through me, hunting for cracks. Then he clapped me once, too hard to be friendly, and walked back inside, humming some off-key tune. I stayed frozen until the door clicked shut. My jaw ached. My fists were balled tight enough that my nails cut skin. Later, I tucked the USB deeper into the lining of my uniform pocket. If he wanted me cornered, fine. But the next move wouldn't be his. This was no longer about suspicion. This was about evidence. And I wasn't walking out of Albuquerque without enough to bury him. Travis loved theatrics. That much was obvious from the way he swung the SUV into the valet line of the steakhouse, leaning on the horn like the space had been reserved for him. Inside, the air smelled of butter and oak, waiters in press suits gliding between booths. This wasn't dinner. This was a showcase. Patricia walked 2 steps behind him, sundress neat, eyes fixed on the floor. I stayed close enough to hear her shallow breathing, but not close enough to make Travis twitch. 3 men already sat at the corner booth. Suits sharp, watches expensive, confidence radiating like heat. They rose just enough for handshakes. Travis did the introductions with the charm of a politician. "Gentlemen, this is Captain Jessica Miller, our family's ace in the hole." One of them, heavy-set with a gold watch, clasped my hand. His smile was all teeth. Captain Miller, credibility, hard to find these days. The word hit like a blade wrapped in velvet. Credibility, not person, not sister, a tool. Patricia slid into the booth, hands folded in her lap, gaze fixed on her water glass. I took the seat beside her, letting Travis wedge himself between us and the others. Menus came, but no one looked. Orders were prearranged. Steaks, bottles of wine, sides to share. Conversation cut straight to business, cloaked in metaphors. Projects breaking ground. Accounts opening. Partnerships growing. On the surface, it sounded like real estate chatter. Beneath, it reeked of money laundering. Contracts no one dared put on paper. I let them talk, nodding at the right times, studying the rhythm. Travis wanted me impressed. The others wanted me invested. Patricia wanted to vanish. Then it happened. The man at the end of the booth, a lean figure with a scar trailing from temple to jaw, looked at me too long. His fingers froze, halfway to his glass. Recognition flickered. Sharp and unmistakable. Afghanistan, Kandahar province. He'd been there, not in my unit, but near enough. I saw it in his eyes before he smothered it with a grin. "Captain Miller," he said, his tone smooth. Too smooth. "I've heard of your record. Discipline like yours. Rare. In business." The others chuckled, oblivious. Travis beamed, proud to show me off. But that scarred man knew exactly who I was, and for reasons I couldn't yet place. He pretended not to. The stakes shifted in an instant. Desert Ridge wasn't just a local scam with fake construction permits. Its reach brushed the military. My world. That made this more than family trouble. It made it personal. The waiter delivered the food. Steaks hissed on hot plates. Wine poured dark into crystal. Patricia kept her eyes down, knife trembling slightly as she sliced into her meat. Under the table, I could see her leg bouncing, a silent SOS no one else noticed. Gold watch leaned closer, voice dropping through the whole table could hear. With her name, he tilted his chin at Patricia. "We can move millions. Clean. Unstoppable." Patricia froze. Her fork slipped, clattering against porcelain. Travis chuckled, clapping her on the back like she'd just made a joke. "She's family. She trusts me." Her lips pressed thin, her knuckles white around the stem of her glass. I tightened my grip on my beer, fighting the urge to shatter it right there. My pulse thundered, but my face stayed steady. Years of training. Keep your mask on when the wolves circle. The men laughed, voices rolling like smoke over the table. To them, this was all business. To me, it was blood, because now I knew. Patricia wasn't just trapped. She was the centerpiece of their empire, and I was the only variable they hadn't accounted for. I raised the glass to my lips, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Inside, every nerve screamed. The scarred man's gaze lingered, a silent warning or a promise. Either way, I had my confirmation. The enemy wasn't just in this room. The enemy had worn boots once, just like me. And that meant the fight had only begun. Travis called it a family meeting. But his tone was a command, not an invitation. He dropped a folder onto the kitchen table, spreading papers with the precision of a card dealer. "Routine transfers," he said smoothly. "Just signatures to keep this house safe, to keep her safe." His hand pressed onto Patricia's shoulder. too heavy to be called tender. Patricia sat rigid, her knuckles white around the pen he slid toward her. Nothing complicated, Travis went on. Names shift, assets move, everyone wins. I laid my hand over hers before she touched the page. If it's routine, I said evenly, then you won't mind if we read it. His smile twitched. Military discipline. Always by the book. Fine. Read. The first page hit me like a punch. Not transfers at all. Stripping Patricia of every legal right. Funneling assets into a shell controlled by Desert Ridge. A paper noose waiting for her neck. She's not signing these, I said flatly. Patricia's chest rose and fell too fast. Her hands shook, but then she did something I hadn't seen in days. She stood. Her voice cracked, but it carried. No. For a second, silence held. Then Travis's mask ripped away. His jaw clenched. His eyes burned cold. He slammed his fist on the table, rattling glasses. You think this is a game? You think your medals make you untouchable here? This is my house, my rules. Patricia flinched, but she didn't back down. I won't sign. That broke him. His grin vanished, replaced by raw fury. He snapped his fingers. Two men emerged from the hallway, broad-shouldered, cheap suits stretched over muscle. Convince them, Travis barked. They lunged. Training took over. I caught the first man's wrist, twisted hard, and drove my shoulder into his chest. He slammed into the wall, drywall cracking in a puff of dust. The second swung at me, but Patricia moved, grabbing a lamp and smashing it across his back. The bulb burst, sparks flying. He staggered, dazed. Useless idiots, Travis roared, kicking his chair back. His hand dove into his jacket. My gut tightened. A gun. I shoved Patricia behind the overturned table just as the first shot cracked, plaster exploding inches from her head. My ears rang, adrenaline surging hot. You think you can win this? Travis bellowed, gun steady, grin twisted. I own this house, this city, and both of you. I raised my phone above the table edge, red light blinking. His eyes narrowed, realization sinking in. You're bluffing, he snarled. Try me, I said. Every word is recorded. Even if you kill us, everything you've built burns. Patricia's voice cut through, trembling, but clear. Travis, stop. You don't own me. Not my name, not my life. He swung the barrel toward her. I launched, slamming into him. The gun fired wild, shattering a picture frame. We crashed to the floor, grappling. He clawed, dirty, but I pinned his wrist until his knuckles cracked. Patricia snatched the gun, hands shaking so hard I thought she'd drop it. Travis froze, eyes darting between us, bravado cracking. Baby, he pleaded, voice syrup slick. I did it all for us, for you. Tears streaked her face, but her grip steadied. No, you used me. You used everything I had. I'm done. She tossed the gun across the room. The law can deal with you. Sirens wailed outside. Tires screeched. Travis's face contorted. What did you do? I smirked, breathing hard. Left breadcrumbs. Michael made sure someone was listening. The front door burst open. Officers stormed in, weapons drawn. Hands where we can see them. Travis's bravado shattered. Fury twisted his face, but he raised his arms. The hired muscle groaned on the floor, too battered to resist. Cuffs clicked, loud. Patricia collapsed against me, sobs racking her chest. For a moment, the chaos blurred, and I saw us as kids. Two girls on a sunburnt sidewalk outside our childhood home. I was 7, too scared to walk into my first day of school. Patricia took my hand, squeezing, until I stopped shaking. You don't quit, she whispered. Not ever. You walk in with me, or we don't walk at all. She carried my fear then, like she carried every burden. Now, decades later, in a house littered with glass and smoke, it was my turn to carry hers. As the officers dragged Travis out shouting threats, Patricia clung tighter. Her voice cracked in my ear. "He'll kill me. He'll find a way." "No," I said firmly, holding her steady. "Not this time. We've got proof. We've got witnesses. He's finished." The living room was wrecked. Shattered furniture, scarred walls, glass crunching under boots. But for the first time, Patricia's shoulders sagged in relief, not fear, because the chain was broken. And Travis Cooper, self-proclaimed king of stability, had finally lost control. Police secured the gun, the men, and finally, Travis himself. A detective's eyes cut to me. "Captain Miller, we'll need every file you've got." I tapped my uniform pocket, where the USB pressed cold against my chest. "You'll have it," I said, "and it's enough to burn Desert Ridge to the ground." The flashing lights washed the street in red and blue. Travis stood cuffed, his perfect hair damp with sweat, his suit rumpled, his face twisted between fury and disbelief. For once, there was no stage left for him to perform on. The neighbors had gathered, whispering in the glow of cruiser headlights. Every secret he'd built his empire on was spilling into the night. The officers worked with practiced speed. Evidence bagged, statements recorded, hired muscle loaded into separate cars. A detective flipped through the folder of documents I'd handed over, shaking his head at each page. "You weren't kidding, Captain. Offshore accounts, shell companies, forged permits. With this and the recordings, Desert Ridge won't last the month." Patricia stood beside me, arms wrapped tight around her body, eyes locked on Travis as he was shoved into the back of a squad car. He shouted promises, threats, a storm of words meant to claw his way back into control. None of them landed. The door slammed shut, and for the first time in years, silence followed. By dawn, Desert Ridge was already unraveling. News crews camped outside the courthouse. Federal agents swooped in, seizing accounts and freezing assets. The men who toasted millions over steak dinners scrambled for lawyers who wouldn't touch them. And Patricia, her name cleared from every contract she'd been forced to sign, walked free. I drove her back to the house once more, just long enough to pack. She moved through rooms like they belonged to a stranger. Dresses she never chose, furniture picked to impress investors, a kitchen staged for showings, not meals. Her hand lingered on a canvas shoved in the corner, half finished, dust clinging to paint strokes. She lifted it gently, eyes wet. He said I'd never finish anything, that I'd always need him to keep me standing. She pressed the canvas into my hands. But I don't believe that anymore. 2 weeks later, a moving van pulled away from Albuquerque, headed north. The townhouse at Fort Carson wasn't big. 2 bedrooms, narrow kitchen, a balcony facing the mountains. But it was hers. No shadows, no locked safes, no staged perfection. Just space to breathe. We unpacked boxes together, stacking dishes, folding clothes, hanging a single painting above the couch. That night, we sat on the front stoop with paper plates balanced on our knees, eating takeout fried chicken and corn on the cob. The cicadas hummed in the distance, and for the first time in months, Patricia's laughter didn't sound forced. "This feels strange," she admitted, pulling her cardigan tighter. "Quiet, no one waiting for me to make a mistake, no one watching every move." "Strange doesn't mean bad," I said, leaning back against the railing. "It just means new." She nodded, chewing slowly, her shoulders relaxing bit by bit. For a while, we said nothing at all. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean, the kind of silence you only get when no one's holding a leash over your throat. Later, as the sky dimmed and stars began to appear, Patricia turned to me. "Why didn't you give up on me? You could have walked away." I studied her face, older than it should have been, from years of carrying someone else's weight. Because you never gave up on me. First day of school, I froze on the sidewalk. Remember, you held my hand and dragged me through those doors. You didn't let me quit. She smiled through tears. I was just a kid. And you still saved me, I said. That's what family is supposed to do. Not control, not cage. Just show up when it matters. Patricia exhaled shakily, then leaned her head on my shoulder. Then I guess it's my turn to learn how to show up again. The porch light flickered above us. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Ordinary sounds, safe sounds. For once, that was enough. The lesson was written all around us in the quiet. Family isn't the place that forces signatures, controls every move, or threatens with silence. Family is the place that stands with you against the dark, even when you're trembling. Real strength doesn't come from bank accounts or contracts, from men who think control makes them kings. It comes from loyalty, forgiveness, and the stubborn resilience to keep standing. Even when the world tries to knock you flat, Patricia would rebuild. She'd paint again, maybe teach, maybe just breathe for a while. I'd keep serving, keep watch, knowing that just down the road, my sister had finally carved out a place of her own. We sat there until the food was gone and the night grew colder, watching the mountains darken against the sky. For once, the future didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a promise, because after everything, after the lies and the violence and the years lost to someone else's hunger, we had one thing Travis never could touch. We still had each other.